Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the DC Powerplay. I'm your host, Subir, and you can find me on Twitter at PleaseWinDC. I'm joined tonight by Drew Gallagher, and you can find him on Twitter as well at RoboStop10. And Amanda is not with us tonight, but I'm sure she'll be back with us next week. Just so you know, everyone, we do this podcast for one of the top sports websites in the district. It's called DMVSportsNetwork.com, and they can be followed on Twitter at DMV_SN. They have a lot of great daily content on all things DC sports, in addition to college sports as well. So please be sure to subscribe to our show if you enjoy it, wherever podcasts are available, which includes Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And also, we're putting these podcasts on YouTube as well. So without further ado, let's jump right into it, Drew, and start with the game recaps. The week of starting with the game at San Jose, which was a week ago, and somewhat of a surprise result. I don't think any of us had a good feeling about this game, but the Caps pulled out a victory, a 5-1 victory at that. Just a great game overall from the Caps. Even after giving up an early San Jose goal, they came back and scored 5 unanswered. They forced turnovers and had odd man rushes. And at least recently, this was pretty much the closest thing we've seen the Caps play to the way they played in the playoffs last season. So just a really surprise result. Pretty proud of the guys there. What were some of your takeaways from the San Jose game?
I would say that I was not looking forward to watching this game. I had someone ask me, "Hey, I'm thinking about watching it. Should I waste my time?" And I was like, "No, they never play well in San Jose. Historically, I regret it after after watching the game. A game that was just kind of playing. Like I said, we've been talking about how they've been playing uneven, inconsistent. In this particular game, they were great. I thought they played one of the more complete games of the year, and they came out and they were skating. The passes were crisp. I thought that they kind of lessened the issues with the penalties. They played really, really well, and to dominate San Jose, a team that was actually dominating on their home ice up to that point, they had a great game, and I just could hopefully they would bottle that for the rest of the road trip.
Yeah, and I remember tweeting after the game, like just being thankful that they finally played well in front of Holtby, because they'd been kind of leaving him out to dry in recent games, and to be able to hold San Jose to just one goal is really impressive. So I think we probably shocked those fans out there in Cali who usually see their team win every game there at the tank. But like we said, Caps played really well this game. Unfortunately, it did not continue into their next game. And like you said, Drew, the inconsistency showed up. So now they played a Ducks team, an Anaheim Ducks, who have not been playing well at all recently, who have just been struggling to score in general. The Caps ended up losing 5-2. So this was an ugly loss, pretty much an opposite of the San Jose game. Some things I noticed was the forwards not playing good enough defense. I remember one instance, Kuzi's guy is going to the net and he peels off and is going towards the puck where 2 defenders are already there. I just don't know what's going through their heads sometime. Good news, Ovi scored his 40th goal. But overall, like I said, Ducks couldn't score, and they put up 5 on the Caps that game. And it was just bad to see after playing so well in San Jose. Kind of a letdown, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was a pretty poor performance again. They had a couple days off from the San Jose game. This was the first of back-to-backs. They come in, they get outshot 39-25. They only are 30% in the faceoff dot, and they take 4 penalties, and their penalty killing is 50%. So the 3 things that they've been plaguing them all year, pretty much certainly in spots, rear their ugly heads again. And it just seemed like, I don't know, they're just their heads weren't in it. They just total absence of what you saw in San Jose, and they're just a real bad performance overall, and just one of those, I guess, one of the tapes you're thrown to the trash. The that one goal that you speak of, that it seemed like the defenseman disappeared, and then Kuzi didn't even go back into the defensive zone. He started going back out either for a change or out to center for some reason, and it was like a 2-on-0. Just was atrocious. I think it's probably the worst shift that I think I've seen all year from this team in that one sequence. It was terrible.
Yeah, it's just kind of like we've seen it before, how they're just kind of taking the easy way out or cutting corners, meaning like they think they're getting the puck out of the zone and they're starting to leave the zone before it actually happens, and then the opponent is coming back towards our net. But also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Oshie got hurt this game.
Yes.
I don't remember.
He had an upper body injury.
Okay. And do you know if it was a head injury? Because I know he played the next game, which was good to see, but I don't remember if it was a headshot or it was just upper body in general, I guess.
I didn't see it, and I went to try to look back to find it, and I really couldn't locate it. So I know it happened, I think, early in the, it was sometime in the first or early second, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But they described it as an upper body, but not a concussion, because he's had the concussion history. Most notably the one from Thornton, and the one from Malkin, those two in particular. But they were describing it as upper body, so I was assuming it was shoulder, because the next night in LA, he was playing, so obviously it wasn't something that was too serious, something kind of like maybe a minor thing.
Yeah, it's always kind of nervous whenever Oshie gets hit up high, because we all know his concussion history. But so after the Ducks game, the Caps continued their trip out west and went to the LA Kings, where they were able to pull off a 3-2 victory. They were up 3-0 in this game. It got kind of close at the end, but overall the Caps, I think, played a solid game. Copley gets the win, which is good to see. Ovechkin with 2 goals. I think they were both power play goals, I'm pretty sure. And regardless of the opponent, Kings aren't a very good team this year. It was a great bounce back game for the Caps when, you kind of had to have it after playing pretty poorly the night before. So it was just good to see. Do you have any takeaways from the Kings game?
Yeah, and another good game after a bad one. I thought in the third period they had a couple lapses. The one from Iafallo where he went down the slot and the defenseman didn't pick him up was a bit of a breakdown. But and then Kovalchuk got something late, which is just real, minor. But overall, I thought they played well. They've got a couple, as you said, a couple power play goals from Ovechkin. Their defense was much better. They're back to playing, the way that they can play. Again, the one glaring problem right now with them is their faceoffs. In the LA game, they were only 33%. Another game of under 50, obviously, but also under 40%. They're just getting killed in the dot, and I think that's part of the problem, as far as possession for them, as far as getting worn down. Not obviously not at on the power play, at the penalty kill, but at 5-on-5. So a big 2 points, and again, in a place that they normally don't do well. I think they said the last time they had won in LA, 2005.
Right.
So great to see them get a big win, because the 2 big points. Points are essential now, because they're in the thick of the race. You could easily, with 3 bad games, be on the outside looking in. So it was 2 big points for them, and a good game, I think, overall.
Yeah, no doubt. So then we move on to the game that we both just watched at Toronto. Turned out to be a 3-2 victory again for the Caps. This was an important game for them. I didn't know which way it would go against an opponent that had beaten us already twice this year and pretty much blown us out twice this year. So the Caps put together a really strong game. Even though it was just a 1-goal victory, they did, I think, frustrate Toronto for most of the game, especially the first 2 periods. I will say that Holtby was great, and he had to be at times. But the Caps had a lot of pushback, and they had chances of their own. Ovechkin stayed hot with a power play goal. That's 4 straight power play goals for Ovechkin, which is interesting because throughout most of the season, he had a lot of even strength goals and really not that many power play goals. But now the PP goals are starting to rack up for him, like we're used to seeing. Conley also stayed hot with a great goal. He has now, I believe, tied his career high with 15 goals in a season. So he's definitely going to surpass that this season, which is just great to see because it just gives balance throughout the whole lineup. I will say that Toronto did start tilting the ice in the third period, and that's when the big goal from Tom Wilson came shorthanded, which kind of stopped all of Toronto's momentum. It was a great pass from Eller up the ice right into Tom's stride, and he made no mistake, giving the Caps a 3-1 lead at the time with about 10, 13 minutes left or so in the third period. Again, that really halted the momentum, and the hometown kid, the Toronto-born kid, Tom Wilson, did it in his, I'm sure, in front of friends and family there, and really shut the crowd up. But what were some of your thoughts on this game? It was a really big 2 points.
Yeah, it was a huge 2 points, and I was kind of worried going into this game because Toronto, as you said, has been just skating all over the Caps this year, unlike last year. And I was concerned going into this game that Toronto, being at home, would have, I got the crowd behind them. They've been playing well. Caps have been up and down. Just didn't know which team which Caps team would show up, but they were ready right off the bat. What I noticed was they were skating. The forecheck was obvious. They were putting pressure on the defense like they were late last year, and they were playing their game. They went up 3-0. Ovechkin gets his 43rd of the year on a great shot, similar to what was the Tampa Bay. The one I noticed was similar to the Game 7
Yep.
Tampa Bay goal.
Yes.
Not as far out, but basically almost the same type of play from the opposite side of the ice, and they got the jump on him early. The good thing I noticed about them was that the penalty kill was good. They only took 2 penalties all game. Didn't let them score. The Toronto was 0 for 2, and like I said, they got one of their own. The other, the issue again, 32% on faceoffs. That's not good. They definitely need to bring that up. And Toronto had 42 shots on goal, and the only reason they win this game is obviously the shorthanded goal is a game-winning goal. But Braden Holtby tonight played outstanding. Stood on his head, made a huge few saves early, and then the Brown shot he kind of got a great pass, just kind of dropped in his lap.
Yeah, the alley-oop pass.
Yeah, and he stacked the pads on him to make the save. Was the biggest save of the game. Kept them at bay long enough, to wrap it up. But I think Holtby, Wilson, Verona were the 3 best players tonight in that game.
Yeah, Holtby definitely gets the top star for me in this game. Without him, Toronto could have easily had 4 or 5 goals this game. And it's weird because, we're saying the Caps played well, but that doesn't mean that Toronto didn't have chances and some good chances. And with their skill that they have to hold them to just 2 goals, their second goal being in, while they were empty netter, or they had an empty net. It was pretty impressive to hold them to 2 goals. But this game was important for the Caps in another reason, not just the 2 points, but just to feel like they can beat Toronto and not get swept. Just in case you see them in the playoffs, at least you would go into that series knowing that you had beaten them at least once, and not just been completely dominated throughout the whole series. But beside that, do you have any other final thoughts on the Toronto game?
I thought that a couple players I was pleased to see. I thought Juice was really good tonight. I think he's the good balance with Orpik. I know Orpik was a -2 tonight. I think he got kind of. I think at one point he was on the ice with Carlson because of the change, but I think Juice, since he's been back, is now he's getting his legs. I think he's been playing better each game, and they need him on that third pair. I think he just gets the puck out quick, and he can skate. He's been getting better. And then the other one other player that I thought really was good tonight was Connolly. Overall, I think the third line, Brickowski, Eller, and Connolly have been playing really, really well the last couple of weeks and have kind of stood out. I think Burakovsky still has some issues, maintaining control of the puck and getting muscled off on the boards at times. But that line together has really stood out last few games. And Connolly himself, I think he got his 15th goal tonight, which I think is his career high, if I'm not mistaken.
15th is tied his career high.
Tied his career high. Okay, so but he's really been noticeable of late and really asserting himself. And really playing well. And I've been pleased that, that line itself has kind of started to show up to take some of the pressure off the top too.
Yeah, no doubt. Eller has certainly had his passing stick lately, and Conley's had his scoring touch, which is really good to see. And we have talked about recently how good Burakovsky has been as well, the third line overall. But all right, so before we continue, everyone, and talk about the big news about the Caps trading for Carl Hagelin, I just want to remind everyone of the DMV Sports Network's library of podcasts. We have 9 total shows, including shows for the Redskins, the Capitals, of course, Nationals, Wizards, Ravens, and eventually fantasy football as well when that time comes around. And we have a pair of mixed bag shows called It's About Time DC and Dom and Thunder. We also have a debate show called DMV Dispute, and that is available via live stream on Twitter. And all these shows are available wherever you listen to podcasts. So please like these or subscribe to these podcasts and leave a review if you want. We would appreciate all of that. Okay, so Drew, the big news that we found out this afternoon was one of the bombshell droppings is the Capitals have landed Carl Hagelin from the LA Kings just for a third-round pick and a conditional pick in the 2020 draft. So you don't give up a player and you land a pretty solid player, in my opinion. I've always been a kind of secret fan of Hagelin just because I've always loved his speed. And he's obviously hurt the Caps in the past when he played for the Rangers and the Penguins, of course, but he's only 30 years old. I thought he was older than that. I found out he was 30. That's not too bad. I'm sure he still has a lot of speed, and he hasn't scored or produced much on the score sheet this year, but I feel like on a good team with the Caps, he can really be a solid piece for a playoff run. What are some of your initial reaction when you heard about this trade?
Yeah, it's interesting as, the work up to it was, that it was going to be Yaskin that got sent to waivers and, oh, no, now it's going to be DSP. And so DSP clears waivers. And then the rumor started that it was that it was going to be the Kings that they were going to potentially be dealing with, potentially Hagelin, potentially to Foley, Lewis, maybe even Kyle Clifford. And then as the day went on, they said, well, look, it looks like it's going to be Hagelin. And so my fear is, are we getting Hagelin now, who's on, maybe a product of being on the Kings, or is he starting easy over the hill all at 30, or are we going to be getting the Hagelin of 3 to 5 years ago, who was killing the Caps in the playoffs? So my thing is I'm hoping that we're getting the same player that was ripping our hearts out, in the playoffs for the last. Over that 5-year stretch. He has the speed. He plays the penalty kill. I think he slots in on the third line. You're looking at maybe Hagelin, Eller, and Connolly, and either Burakovsky gets sent to the fourth line or the press box, or what I think he's going to be traded. But I think that Hagelin brings. He has the most playoff experience. He's played 121 playoff games, and that's most in the league
among active players. Yeah,
among active
that's
players.
amazing.
So I think that he's got a rapport with Backstrom, the fellow Swede.
Mm.
So I think that this could really work out well. I don't have a problem giving up a third round pick, even a conditional one is a 6th round pick next year. It's throwaway. But that leaves the Caps with only 4 picks in this year's draft, and they're now only $25,000 away from the cap, which means I think that they're on target to probably do something else. But I think that Hagelin will be a good fit, and it'd be interesting to see how he plays in Buffalo on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and you briefly touched on it. Where does he slot into this lineup? If you assume that Brickowski stays and they keep the third line together, then he would have to be a 4th liner. Overall, I think he's an improvement over DSP. I love Devontae and how well he played in the playoffs. We would not have won the cup without him. But the truth is, just so far this year, he's been non-existent for most of the year. And it's possible that a player like Hagelin can just add a spark that could really kind of put you over the top. And again, we're not looking for an elite goal scorer from Hagelin, but we're looking at someone who can apply pressure to the opponent and just be sound defensively, doesn't turn the puck over and does a good job of getting it out of our zone, which I think are some of his strengths. And obviously he's a great penalty killer. I don't think they signed him or, traded for him because he's a great penalty killer. I think the better thing would just be to, stop taking so many penalties. But regardless, he'll probably play on the PK. And, we'll see how he does. I think, he's someone who can kind of fit into every line. I've heard people say you can play him up and down the lineup. So we'll see. I'm excited to see him play against Buffalo, the Caps' next game. And some minor details if people are interested. I'm pretty sure the Kings are retaining 50% of his salary. And I also saw somewhere on Twitter that Pittsburgh is still paying him a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know if you know.
From the first trade.
What's that?
Yeah, from his first trade, when he got traded to LA, they retained some salary apparently for LA. And yeah, they're paying him, and LA is retaining half, so they're paying him as well.
Okay. Wow, how crazy would that be if he scores against Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh's paying him to score against them in the playoffs? That would be something sweet. But overall, now the next question is, do you think the Caps are done? And I've got a feeling that you don't believe they are done. You think there's some more workings in the mix here before the trade deadline. And I agree, because I think there's still some scouts at Caps games. And we'll see if Brickowski is moved, or if Yaskin hits the trading block. But do you have any predictions of what else can go down for the Caps?
Yeah, I don't think Brian McClellan's done yet. Like I said, like we were talking about earlier, they're $25,000 from the cap, so I don't think he wants to stay there. Brickowski is the one that most of the year has been on the trade block. McClellan's been true to his word. Hey, look, I'm not in a hurry to move him. I'd like to try to keep him, but we're going to keep our options open on him. So my thing is that they're not going to pay him $3.25 million, which is what he's scheduled to be offered as an RFA next year, for the production that they're getting from him right now. He's inconsistent. As we talked about, he is playing better on that line, but it's just, they're just not going to pay him that type of money when they can bring up someone from Hershey, for example, that they might be able to get better play from. So my guess is, I think that he's most likely to be moved by the deadline. Now the question is where. Tonight there's been some Twitter activity in the sense that the St. Louis Blues have been scouting the Caps and scouting Hershey for the last week or two.
And we have trade history with St. Louis.
We do. They had 2 scouts at the game tonight with Toronto. As a matter of fact, their assistant general manager and director of player personnel were at the game to scout the Caps tonight. And so that's the 4th game in a row that at least 2 scouts have been at a Caps game to scout them. So I think there's some fire there. The question is what would potentially come from St. Louis. I would suspect that you might see Burkowski and another body, whether it be Yaskin. Maybe they do a bigger deal. Maybe it's Burkowski and Orlov, and you get someone like Shen, someone like Pareko, Petrangelo,
Yeah.
defensively speaking. But I think what they need is bottom six help. They need a player that can take faceoffs and can play the wing. And I think that you can potentially look at Pareko, Fabry, uh, maybe even Shen. The interesting part was Shen was scratched tonight with a potential quote unquote injury, but had played in the last couple of games, and there was no mention that he got hurt or missed any time. So, like I said, with the deadline, I think a lot of teams play play cloak and dagger with their players.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and Monday. But I suspect that McClellan's not done yet.
Yeah, and then specifically with St. Louis, the interesting point is that they've been playing really well. Winners of their last 11 games, they're right back in the playoffs. So they're not exactly maybe sellers like we thought they would be mid-season. So I don't know if that changes anything, but I really like the idea of maybe I can't pronounce the defender's last name, Peter Angelo.
Petrangelo.
Petrangelo. He's a pretty good defender and would certainly be a welcomed addition to this Caps defense. But we will certainly see what happens because with the Hagelin trade, something you did not address is the face-offs. So, he's not someone that really is, that's not his strength. So that is still a weakness on this team, something that we will see if the GM of the Caps addresses. Besides that, I'm really looking forward to seeing Carl Hagelin and seeing what he brings to the team. Are there any final thoughts you have on this trade, or are you just kind of, in wait and see mode? Like I think a lot of Caps fans are. They're not, over the hill for the trade, but they're also not down in the dumps. They're kind of just in the middle, and you just kind of have to see how well he plays with us.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like a tryout for Hagelin. I don't know how it will ultimately work out. I mean, for example, if he wants to stick around after the season, then maybe they can work something out. I know we'll probably, it's a little early to talk about, but the Caps are going to look really different next year because they got at least 3 UFAs, I believe, 3 or 4. And they've got another 4 or 5 RFAs, and Burkowski, one of them, probably won't be here. So their offensive look is going to be looking a little different. They might actually be getting younger. So I'd be interested to see how Hagelin kind of fits in at the end of the year here. If it actually works out real well, let's say they go back to back, maybe he wants to stick around and stay. Maybe at what he's making, I think he was making $4 million a year with LA. Maybe that they keep him there, maybe a slight raise. I guess, like you said, he's only 30. I mean, he probably can look at another 4 or 5 year contract at a modest, 4.25 again, something like that. If not, then I think he can be replaced with somebody in Hershey for sure. So, but I think that he's going to complement that bottom six really well, and I'm interested to see how he kind of plays on Saturday.
Yeah, and he's 30, but it's kind of like a young 30. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's had any major injuries, has he?
He was injured early in the year
Okay.
for LA. He missed a pretty good chunk of time. I think he had a knee injury, if memory serves, or a lower body injury of some kind, and so he's been back a good handful of games since then. But he did miss a little bit of time early on.
Okay, so that is something maybe to monitor, but I'm sure he's pretty much back to almost 100% if he's played recently. But besides that, I think that'll do it for this episode. Caps fans, thanks for listening in. We can't wait to see how Carl plays with the Caps, and we just hope the Caps keep playing well because they played pretty well on this road trip. They're going to wrap it up in Buffalo. We hope they come out with 2 points there. It'll be a tough East matchup against an opponent that's dying for points, especially 2 points. So again, my name is Subir. You can find me on Twitter at PleaseWinDC. and Drew as well at RoboStop10. Thanks for listening in to the DC Powerplay. We'll talk to you guys next week. See you, Drew.
See you later. Have a good evening.